Welcome back to another Explainer, everyone. Whether you're tuning in from the US, Canada, or honestly, anywhere else in the world, today we're stepping right into one of the most famous historical narratives of all time. We're going to look at a story of ultimate contrasts. A story that has literally echoed through the centuries to teach us about facing insurmountable odds. We are, of course, talking about David and Goliath. I want you to picture the tense, heavy atmosphere of an ancient battlefield. Thousands of seasoned warriors are standing frozen, feeling absolutely, completely powerless against a single terrifying threat. Okay, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine standing on a battlefield, surrounded by thousands of soldiers, and feeling completely powerless. Well, that was the grim reality in the Valley of Elah. The atmosphere there was just incredibly thick with tension. You've got the Israelite army standing on one side of the valley, staring across at the Philistine army on the other. But here's the thing, they weren't just looking at an opposing army. They were looking at a single warrior who stepped out from the enemy lines, someone unlike anyone they had ever seen before. Which brings us to Chapter 1 of our explainer, the Valley of Fear. Before we can really appreciate the hero of this narrative, we absolutely have to understand the sheer scale of the terror that was gripping the Israelite army. This wasn't just a regular tactical standoff. This was psychological warfare at its absolute peak, driven by one remarkably imposing Philistine warrior who knew exactly how to break an army's spirit without even swinging his sword. 40. That is the exact number of days this giant, a man named Goliath, walked out and openly challenged the Israelites. Imagine being a soldier in that camp for 40 consecutive days. Every single morning, every single evening, this massive warrior paraded in front of you. With each sunrise, the morale of the Israelite soldiers plummeted, and their paralyzing fear just grew stronger and stronger. Goliath's challenge was booming, and honestly pretty simple. Choose a man to fight me. It was a call for single combat, winner takes all. It was meant to end the battle quickly, but absolutely no one moved. Not a single seasoned, heavily armed soldier wanted to step foot in that valley to face this giant. Fear had taken complete control of the entire army. The sheer size and confidence of this one guy had effectively neutralized thousands of trained fighters. No way were they going down there. So let's shift gears, transition away from the dust and the tension of that terrifying battlefield, and move to Section 2, the unlikely shepherd. Far away from those front lines, out in the peaceful, rolling green hills of the countryside, we're introduced to someone who couldn't be more different from those soldiers shivering in the Valley of Elah. We meet a young man named David. Now, let's contrast these two. On one side, you have Goliath, a tall, imposing warrior, heavily built, dripping in bronze armor, carrying a massive shield and a heavy spear. He is literally the ultimate ancient war machine. On the other side, you have David. He's roughly a 17-year-old shepherd wearing simple beige and brown clothes. He carries no heavy armor, no great sword. He just has a wooden walking staff and a simple leather sling. On paper, it looks like an absolute mismatch. So how do these two entirely different worlds collide? Well, David's father sends him to the battlefield simply to deliver some food to his older brothers who are serving in the army. But when David arrives and hears Goliath shouting his daily mockery at the army of Israel, his reaction is super striking. He says, "Who is this man that he should defy the armies of the living God?" While all those trained soldiers were reacting with sheer terror, David reacted with genuine curiosity and a fierce determination. He simply couldn't understand why everyone was so terrified of this guy. It's really vital to understand exactly where David's mindset came from. It was built entirely on confidence from his past. As a shepherd, David had spent countless hours alone in the wilderness protecting his father's sheep from highly dangerous predators. We're talking lions and bears here. Through those terrifying life-or-death struggles, David learned a crucial lesson. His strength didn't come from his physical size or the weapons he carried. His confidence came entirely from his faith that God would protect him. And that brings us to our third section, faith before the king. Having firmly resolved that someone needed to stand up to Goliath, David doesn't just get to waltz right out and face the enemy. First, he has to face the intense doubt and skepticism of his very own leader. And, sometimes proving yourself to the people on your own side is the hardest battle of all. David is brought into the royal tent to stand before King Saul. And Saul, looking down at this teenage boy, just states the obvious. You cannot fight this warrior. You are only a young man. Saul sees the purely physical reality. It's a kid versus a seasoned giant. But David pushes back. He passionately explains those past experiences protecting his sheep, insisting that the exact same God who delivered him from the claws of wild animals in the past would be with him again, right now. His conviction is just completely unshakable. And that unshakable conviction leads us right into the climax of the story. Section 4, The Giant Falls. Saul finally, maybe a little reluctantly, agrees to let David go. And we reach the absolute climax of this incredible historical narrative. The cinematic tension here is just palpable. Imagine thousands of heavily armed soldiers watching in stunned silence as this young, completely unarmed shepherd walks entirely alone down into the floor of the valley to meet the giant. On his way down to the battlefield, David stops at a small stream and picks up just 5 smooth stones to put in his shepherd's bag. That's it, 5 stones. As Goliath approaches and gets a good look at this kid coming at him with what basically looks like a walking stick, he actually laughs. He openly mocks David. But by focusing only on David's simple tools and his small size, Goliath completely misses where the young shepherd's true power actually lay. In response to the giant's laughter, David delivers this incredibly powerful declaration. He yells, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord." Now this is a masterclass in perspective right here. David wasn't looking at the massive size of the bronze-clad giant standing in front of him. He wasn't calculating the odds based on weapons. David was completely focused on the greatness of God.
As the two move toward each other, David doesn't hesitate. He doesn't back away. In fact, he actually runs toward the giant. Let's slow the action right down for a second to catch this. Step 1, he reaches into his bag and places a single smooth stone into his leather sling. Step 2, while he's running, he swings the sling above his head, building up incredible momentum. And step 3, with perfect precision, he releases the stone.
Suddenly, the chaotic battlefield goes completely silent. The stone strikes Goliath squarely in the forehead. Without a single drawn sword from the Israelites, the giant loses his balance and crashes to the ground. The impossible had just happened, right in front of their eyes. That massive army, which had been completely paralyzed by fear for 40 long days, suddenly realizes that the giant who had been terrorizing them is no longer standing. So the crucial point here is trust over strength. David's phenomenal victory wasn't because he was a stronger warrior or because he had better tactics or superior armor. It was entirely because he trusted God when literally everyone else was too afraid to even move. The giant looked absolutely enormous to everyone, but to David, his faith was simply greater than the giant. Now, let's bring this right into the present day with our final section, your personal giants. We've just analyzed an incredible piece of ancient history. But this narrative isn't just about ancient battlefields and literal giants. It has a profound, direct application to the everyday battles that you and I face in our modern lives. For those of us living fast-paced modern lives across the US and Canada, sometimes the greatest giants we face aren't people at all. They might be a paralyzing fear of navigating an uncertain economy. They might be the crushing weight of a past failure. Or maybe it's the anxiety of a deeply difficult situation at home, or with your health, or at work. Ultimately, a giant is any problem that feels significantly bigger than we are. And let's be honest, when we stand in front of these things, it is so easy to feel exactly like David did. Small, inexperienced, entirely unprepared, and completely overwhelmed. Here is the absolute core takeaway of this entire explainer. You don't have to be the strongest person in the room to have faith. Your personal giant may be huge, and the fear you feel standing in front of it is entirely real and valid. But just like that young shepherd in the valley, your faith and your hope can be so much stronger than the obstacles standing in your way. You don't need to have all the answers, and you sure don't need the best armor. You just need the courage to trust. We're going to end on this thought, and it's a provocative question I want you to carry with you long after this explainer is over. When life puts a giant in front of you, don't only ask, "How big is my problem?" Instead, challenge yourself to ask, "How great is my God?" It's all about intentionally shifting your perspective away from the fear and redirecting it toward the source of your strength. Remember, have faith, hold on to hope, and never let fear have the final word. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next explainer.